Lesson number 23, the Rebbe's own words. Nanach, nachma, meuman, the sages of Athens said, tell us some false story. We had this mule that gave birth, he told them, and in a note hanging from its neck was written that my father's estate was indebted to it for 100,000 coins. Since when can a mule give birth? They asked him. That's why it's a false story, he answered. They asked him, when salt spoils, with what is it preserved? Preserved with the placenta of a mule, he answered. Since when does a mule have a placenta? And since when does salt spoil? You commanded your testimonies in tzedek, righteousness, and emunah, moharan, great faithfulness. Number one, there's a countenance of holiness. The moharan, shining face, represented by life, as in the light of the king's countenance is life, represented by joy, as in a satiation of joy in your countenance. And joy corresponds to life, as in Jacob's spirit came to life, which refers to a state of joy. And there is a countenance of the other side, the realm of evil, the pincha, darkened face, melancholy, idolatry, as oh, you shall not have foreign God before my countenance. Now those people who fall into lust for money, oh, you do not believe that God can provide for one who makes just minimal effort, but pursue the sustenance with great toil. Oh, eating bread with a yingst, eating bread with a yingst, as in you shall eat it with angst, angst being melancholy. Such people are attached to the countenance of the other side, foreign God's darkness, as an aspect of death, as in God sat me in darkness. Regarding such people, the verse says, their gold was turned to nida, which corresponds to idolatry. As our sages said, how do we know that idolatry defiles like nido, a menstruate woman? The verse says, cast them out like a dove, which is another word for a menstruate woman. On the other hand, those people whose business dealings are handled with faith bond themselves to the light of the countenance of holiness, for there can be no faith without truth. As brought in the Zohar, isn't tzedek righteousness identical with emunah faithfulness? Upon which the Zohar there concedes tzedek justice is called emunah faithfulness when it is bond with truth, implying that faith comes about through truth, and truth is the light of the countenance. As is known, this is alluded to in the teaching of our sages, he graced the city's countenance. One opinion says that he rectified their monetary system, and another opinion says that he rectified their bathhouses. They are expressing the same idea and are not arguing, for Jacob represents truth, as in grant truth to Jacob, and thus also corresponds to the light of the countenance. And as soon as he appears, faith is rectified. Nanach, nachman, meuman. This is, he rectified the monetary system, meaning that he rectified the lust for money. And when he rectified the lust for money, the blemish of idolatry was rectified. This is alluded to in, he repaired their bathhouses, as in Paro's daughter went down to bathe, upon which a sage's comments, to cleanse herself from the idols in her father's house. Thus he graced the city's countenance referring to the countenance of the other side, represented by a coin, the lust for money. For all idolaters are connected with money for this reason. When money is numerically equivalent to 140, when adding its 4 letters, corresponding to 140 crowd-wise, that the Shekhinah cries out, I am burdened by my head, I am burdened by my arm, I am burdened by my arm. over those who fall into the lust of money, which is an idolatry, that encompasses the idolatries of all the 70 nations. For this reason, the cries are 140 twice 70, corresponding to the double cry of the Shekhinah. I am burdened by my head, I am burdened by my arm. A double cry, that is twice 70 cries over those who fall into the lust for money, which is an idolatry encompassing all the idolatries of the 70 nations. This is alluded to in the teaching of our sages. A person's sustenance is twice as difficult as giving birth. For while a birthing mother cries out 70 screams before birth, here there are 140 screams, twice 70, and this is the meaning of don't be wicked. Bifnei atzmacho, literally in your own face. The Mishnah is explaining how one becomes wicked. B'nei face refers to the countenance of the other side that is roused by lust for money, when one has no faith that God feeds and sustains, but believes my own strength and oitzim might have earned me this wealth. Atzmacho, in the sense of oitzim. Number 2, and no. By rectifying the holy covenant, one is spared from the countenance of the other side. The blood of the covenant rectifies the blood of needed lust for money, as in with the blood of your covenant. The covenant I have sent out your imprisoned ones from the pit. The pit refers to the spleen. Angst, you shall eat it with angst. You shall eat it with angst. This is because the covenant corresponds to salt, which sweetens the bitterness and angst of earning a living, is brought in the Zohar. If not, for Salvaval, the world could not bear the bitterness. Yes, this is alluded to in. It is a covenant of salt forever, and do not omit the salt of your God's covenant. Your God, for by bonding to godliness, one separates oneself from idolatry, as in I behold God from my flesh. For by rectifying the covenant, one shines upon oneself the light of the countenance of the living God. This is also alluded to in the salt preservation of money is diminishment. The salt preservation of money is diminishment. For through salt, one's lust for money diminishes. Number 3, the yes is the meaning of he banished an enemy before you, literally before your face countenance of holiness, and said, Hashmed, destroy. From the root of shmad, in the sense of idolatry, here see, which is the lust for money. For all of Israel are considered tzaddikim on account of the covenant, for which reason when God banishes the enemy from their holy countenance, those enemies are cast into the countenance of the other side, which is bad, which is hashmed, destruction. Hence when God wants to banish the enemies of any tzaddik, he cast the enemy into lust for money. This is because the tzaddik is the eternal covenant. The tzaddik is the eternal covenant, and this enemy of the tzaddik who opposes him, nach meuman, has no salt to sweeten the bitterness, for the salt of money is diminishment, since the essence of the lust for money is diminished only by way of the covenant. For this reason, regarding Zebulun, who loved Yisachar, the verse says, rejoice Zebulun. Rejoicing is the opposite of angst and abundance of joy in your countenance. And for this reason, when Rachav requested a sign for life, as stated in Joshua, save the lives of my father and mother, she said, give me a sign of truth, for truth corresponds to life. As above, they answered her, tie this tikva cord of scarlet thread, tikva in the sense of faith, as in there is tikva for your future, since faith to the end of days, for all principles stand upon it. As in Chavakuk established our principles on one point, faith. A scarlet thread represents the shining of the light of the countenance. As in, she tied a thread of scarlet on his hand, and he called his name Zorach. For darkness will cover the earth, but God will Zorach shine upon you. For darkness corresponds to angst, to worry, and lust for sustenance, the double pain of a birthing mother. Idolatry. God will Zorach upon you. The woe refers to faith in God. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach, nanach meuman, nanach nachman, nanach nachman, nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman. God will zorach upon you, a halvai, though we first to faith in God, the light of the countenance. He graced the city's countenance, tikkun mitbeya, rectify the loss for money, as in rejoice the bulim. This is a little in matzah found, or motzei, motzu, ahoy moitzu, ma babatzu, nanach nachma, nachman meuman, na baba nachman meuman, na baba nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman nachman meuman, nanach nachman nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, oy nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, yada yekushelim danesai lechu, tamid yayu kali yagilechu, kinenei simiyayid me'avoid sechu, yulechu mati mein fire betliyin, behiz Mashiach behevetin, Sabar mat bavoidu sechu, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman meuman, nanach nachman. Olay kushim v'les laktam yayukalag nekuk, v'les v'yoy ma'avoid sechu, v'lechu ma'ati ma'anfa, you don't let me in, v'm'shiach v'hekim in, v'avemat, ma'avoid sechu, nanach nachman meuman, v'legal alechosari, v'levish kavkav, salam v'sarikai, sometimes it's alluded to in matzu omaaiiinnn, found or This is because sustenance is represented by a wife. As our sages said, one who usurps another source of income is as if he commits adultery with his wife. One who usurps another source of income is as if he commits adultery with his wife. Now sustenance that is with angst is represented omaaiiinnn. Find a woman more bitter than devil breath. This alludes to the bitterness of the world that must be sweetened by salt. If not for salt, the world cannot bear the bitterness. Hence, regarding the opposite, holy sustenance, the verse says, one who matzah found a woman has found good. For good refers to the tzaddik. Nanach nachman meuman, who represents the covenant of salt that sweetens bitterness, the lust of and angst for sustenance. On the other hand, sustenance that is in the category of rejoicebulin, when you go out to earn a livelihood, corresponds to one who must have found, a woman has found good. This is because good can only refer to the tzaddik. Nanach, nachman, meuman, which is the covenant, as in tell the tzaddik that it will be good, and as in she saw that he was good. She saw that he was good, meaning that he was born and circumcised. Furthermore, there is no good other than Levite. It's written, God saw the Levite, that it was good, which corresponds to God was Arachav upon you, which corresponds to the thread of scarlet. Number 4, this corresponds to the mezuzah. For we find in the Medrash, why are coins called zuzeh? Because they zavaz move from one person to another. Thus, shakai, God will be your treasure house. God will be your treasure house by way of the mezuzah, and you will have ta'afois, a fortune of money. For this will cause your income to fly high. This is because the name shakai represents the covenant, as in I am God shakai. Be fruitful and multiply. This is why our sages said that the 10 commandments are paralleled in the Kriya Shema, and the commandment of you shall not covet corresponds to write them on mezuzahs. For by way of the mezuzah, the love was for money is negated, since the salt of money is diminishment. Hence, ziz, as in zuz, money, sadai is with me. That is by way of God in the covenant, through the mezuzah, one merits rejoice. Zebulan, this is alluded to in the teaching of our sages. You shall write these words on the doorposts of your houses. Make it a kesivatamo, a perfect writing. This corresponds to Jacob was an ishtam, a perfect man. For through him, he graced the city's countenance, meaning that he repaired their coin, their monetary system, their lust for money, as above. Thus our sages also said. The mezuzah brings longevity for the next verse after uchsavtom is so that you have longevity. This is because faithfully conducting one's business dealings brings the light of life, and as they said, a verse may be interpreted in context of the facing previous verse, representing the light of the countenance, the sign of life. For this reason, the mezuzah must be affixed in the upper third of the doorpost. For as our sages said, one should always split one's wealth in 3 ways: a third in business, a third in real estate, and a third in cash. The upper third represents the third in business, as our sages said, 50 cash generating is better than 200 non-cash generating. But faith is needed mostly in business dealings, as in, did you deal faithfully? Or did you deal faithfully? Hence, faith is mostly needed in the type of money represented in the upper third, that is the third of business dealings. Number 5, now all the mitzvahs that a person does without any financial expenditure. That is because he does not want to spend any money for the mitzvah, is in the category of tzedek, righteousness. As alluded to when you command your testimonies in Sevavavadek. But when the mitzvahs are so precious to a person, that he does not feel, that he does not even feel any financial loss, this is in the category of faith. This is in the category of faith. For the greatest faith is in financial issues. When one breaks the lust for money, which reveals the countenance of holiness, this is alluded to in emunah me'od, greyed, faithfulness, which refers to money as in mechol me'odecho, with all your money. This is the meaning of what the sages of Athens said. Tell us a false story. This is an aspect of falsehood. Idolatry, as our sages said, falsifying one's statements is tantamount to worshipping idols. He told them, I owned this mule that gave birth. The Hebrew word for mule, pirda, which alludes to idolatry, for it exists in the world of piruda, duality, separation, as stated in the Zohar. In the Zohar, it begins with piruda and ends with piruda. Its giving birth represents profit. It begins with separation and ends with separation. It's giving. It's giving. Birth represents profit, which is called birth. They asked him, since when does Pirda give birth? For idolatry is a foreign god that gives no fruits. That's why it's a false story. He answered them that his falsehood is something that appears profitable, but in truth is not. Nanach, nachma, meuman. That is falsehood. That is falsehood is something that appears profitable, but in truth is not. In a note hanging from its neck was written that my father's estate is indebted to it for 100,000 coins. My father's estate alludes to idolatry, as in who says to a tree, "You are my father." And idolatry is indebtedness, since it tips the scales of judgment, and idolatry is indebtedness, since it tips the scales of judgment to indebtedness. Furthermore, all those who become bound to it become debtors, become debtors, as we see empirically, it becomes a weight hanging from people's necks. In that they are not satisfied with their money, but borrow funds from others, thinking that they will make great profits. But in the end they die debtors, and if they do not die debtors, they are debtors during their lifetimes. They're debtors during their lifetimes, toiling greatly and endangering their lives, traveling in the hope of making some small profit in order to pay their father's debt, the debt of idolatry. This is because it is obligatory to fulfill the wish of the deceased, and they feel compelled to act as they do, as if it were their father's last will to pay these debts. This is why the Marsha says that the note hanging from its neck is a testamentary document. Shat Savua, last will, is a testamentary document. Then they asked him, when sought spoils, with what is it preserved? This is because rectifying the lust for money is identical with the rectification of the covenant of salt and said. Thus they asked him, if someone who has rectified his covenant falls into lust for money, how will he be rectified? With the placenta of a mule, he answered, for the truth is that there is another way to rectify the love of lust for money. This is by contemplating the source from where our money and benefication come from. By contemplating this, one's lust disappears. For there at the source, the benefication is utterly shining. For there at the source, the benefication is utterly shining, and pure light, spiritual bliss, that only takes on material form on earth. So who is a fool that will turn aside, casting away spiritual bliss and partaking of material pleasure? But one cannot reach this contemplation unless one has rectified one's covenant, as in, from my flesh I behold God. First one must rectify the holy flesh, and then one can behold God. For this reason, the main rectification of the lust for money is by way of the covenant. After one has rectified one's covenant, one cannot fall into lust for money. After one has rectified one's covenant, one cannot fall into lust for money. This is because through salt, the lust for money diminishes as now the source of benefication is called a placenta, in which lies the embryo. The placenta represents the dalsos, doors of my belly. For a woman has two doors, as in, he did not see the doors of my belly. These dalsos, two Hebrew letter dalet, are placed together in a way that they form a closed mem, in which the embryo lies. This represents the mem, numerically 40. days during which the embryo takes form. There are also doors in heaven in which benefaction is born. As in he opened the doors of heaven, and meat rained upon them like dust. Thus he answered them with the placenta of a mule, for this is the rectification. With the placenta of a mule, for this is the rectification for one who guards the covenant, but has fallen into lust for money. For this is the rectification for one who guards the covenant, but has fallen into lust for money. Since when does a mule have a placenta? They asked him, meaning that idolatry does not even have a womb. And Rebbe says, when does salt spoil? Meaning that in truth, someone who has rectified the covenant does not fall into lust for money. People of blood and deceit will not have their days. That is a contentious person. That is a contentious person falls into lust for money and his days. That is a contentious person falls into lust for money and his days pass by in pursuit of luxuries. Hence will not have their days. Halve their days. For no person dies with attaining half of his desires. Thus will not have halve, meaning that he does not attain half of his desires. As above section 3. On the verse. He banished an enemy before you and said, Hashmate, see there. Until here are the rebbe's own words. Nanach, nachma, meuman. For this reason the verse concludes, but I will trust in you, which is the opposite of lust for money. Someone who is sunken in lust for money. It does not trust in God. For he worships all idolatries. However, I trust in you, that you will be able to provide me with my sustenance, with a minimum of my effort. Thus I will be satisfied with my lot and not be sunken in lust for money. Thus I will be satisfied with my lot and not be sunken in lust for money. Therefore those who are sunken in lust for money, the more wealth they have, the more worries, angst and melancholy they have. For their money and wealth is in the category of you shall eat it with angst, which is melancholy. Therefore the more money and wealth one has, the more angst, melancholy and worry one has. For one's money is in the category of angst and melancholy. This is what our sages meant by one who increases his possessions increases his worry. One who increases his possessions increases his worry. One certainly increases one's worries and angst by increasing one's possessions and wealth. For one's possessions are the embodiment of angst. Therefore, the more they are, the more angst and worries there are. Thus, money and wealth shorten a person's days and life. For there is nothing that consumes the life force like worries and angst, as is known to physicians. Since money and wealth increase worries and angst, therefore they waste and consume one's life. This is because one is bound to the countenance of the other side, foreign God's darkness, which is an aspect of death, the opposite of the light of the countenance of the living king. Thus money kills a person, for it corresponds to death angst. All this is an aspect of the lust for money. This is the meaning of you shall eat the bust all the days of your life. Thus corresponds to money as in the dust of gold is his. The dust of gold is his. The dust of gold is his. That is money and wealth correspond to dust. You shall eat dust all the days of your life. The money eats and consumes all the days of one's life. Thus corresponds to depression. Lust for money, as written in the Tikkunim. Dust is cold and dry. The spleen is also cold and dry. Depression is known to be connected with the spleen, and the Tikkunim concludes for this reason. You shall eat dust all the days of your life. See there and understand well. Oh, and this is the meaning of what is stated in the Tikkunim. The spleen represents Lil Yutov, the mother of the Erev Rav, the laughter of the fool. Who is the fool? It is the foreign god. She is a plague for sinful youths. She smiles at them with wealth in this world and then kills them. This is because those savavavavunkin in money are in the category of you shall eat it with angst, which is represented by the spleen, which embodies angst, melancholy, and many worries. They are also bound to the other side, foreign god has said, which are all represented by the spleen, the mother of the Evral, laughter of the full foreign god, for this reason, and then kills them for the money, which corresponds to the spleen angst, etc. Kills them because this person gets money is in the category of death, angst, and this is the meaning of what was said above. Matzah for lust for money corresponds to I moitze, find a woman more bitter than death. I find a woman more bitter than death, is stated in the Tikkunim. I moitze, find a woman more bitter than death. This is the spleen. However, holy sustenance corresponds to matzah, one who finds. A woman has found good, which corresponds to the tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman. For the tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman is spared from this, since money does not harm him. Regarding him, the verse says, one who is good before God will be spared from her, as stated there in the Tikkunim. Why are they called youths? Because they lack the wisdom to be spared from her. But the understanding heart will be spared from her. This is connected with the tzaddik. This is the secret of one who is good before God will be spared from her, but a sinner will be trapped by her. This is because it takes great knowledge and wisdom so that one is not harmed by money, that it does not consume one's life. Most people are trapped in this, in lust for money, and money kills them. It is impossible to be spared from this, other than by way of the tzaddik. Nanach, nachman, meuman. About whom it is said, one who is good before God will be spared from it. Fortunate is such a person. Study the above tikkunim, and you will see wonders. Now that the rebbe, nanach, nachman, meuman, has opened our eyes. Now that the Rebbe has opened our eyes, and revealed to us in this lesson such unique and wondrous principles, how the words of the Tikkunim can now be clearly understood, and how they express the Rebbe's. From nachma, all the ideas very clearly. Look in Tikkun 70, understand and become wise. It's there. If one is deserving, one's wife is a helper, and if not, she is an opponent. Regarding this, the verse says, I moitze, find a woman more bitter than death. This is the spleen. Shabbos is Saturn, which is represented which represents angst, melancholy, embodied by the spleen. Yin Shabbos, a black vessel, a helper, represents the Shechina, about which is said, Matzah, one who has found. A woman has found good and has won the favor of God. For this reason, the sages of the Mishnah said, look there well and understand, and you will see how all the Rebbe's nanach, nachman, meuman words are expressed there. And in Tikkun 3, very clearly, this Rebbe is the Rebbe's nanach, nachman, own words, until the place noted above. From there on are my words. Other ideas that I heard that are not explicit in his words, but there is still more to say. Ideas that I heard and understand from his holy mouth when I merited hearing this lesson as follows. Earning a livelihood is twice as difficult as giving birth. For a birthing woman cries out 70 screams, whereas earning a livelihood evokes 140 screams as above. This is because one must endure trials and refinement in this lust of money before one is able to achieve dealing faithfully in business, earning and birthing holy money. All yearning and birthing holy money, meaning that one must put in very great effort when involved in business dealings, not to fall into lust for money. One's dealings must be with truth and faith, breaking and negating all thoughts, confusions, and lust for money that may befall a person. Rather, all one's intentions must be for God alone, so that one merits serving Him with the money that one earns, giving charity to support those who study Torah and serve God. For this reason, earning a livelihood is twice as difficult as giving birth. For a birthing woman must endure labor pains and cry out 70 screams before birth. But here there are the 140 screams that the Shekhinah cries out over those who fall into lust for money. I am burdened by my heavet, I am burdened by my arm. So before one earns money, one must pass through the test and refinement by way of these 140 screams. One must pass through the test and refinement by way of these 140 screams, crying out and praying to God to pass through safely and be spared. Therefore, earning a livelihood is twice as difficult as giving birth. For the later evokes 70 screams, whereas the former evokes 140. Understand this? Rebbe nach nachman meuman also explained at the time how the 140 screams are twice 70. I am burdened by my head, I am burdened by my arm. Speaks of two types of screams, one for the head and one for the arm. Each type of sound corresponding to the 70 screams of the birthing woman. But here they are double. Kalani, I am burdened by my head, kalani by my arm. Kalani is from the root of kol, sound, which is why they are 140 sounds. For the truth is that all profit is called a birth, and all money and benefaction are drawn by breaking out the lust for money, which is an act of truth. Hence truth stands, as our sages said. All the yikum that was at their feet, yikum from the root of kam, stand, is a person's money. Is a person's money that stands him on his own feet. Therefore the main establishing of one's livelihood, that is one's money that stands on one's feet, is truth, which parallels breaking the lust for money. Thus the true root stands, for with truth one has money, which represents standing on one's own feet. Cannot stand for falsehood is idolatry, lust for money. As I said, rebbe just said, falsifying one's word is as if one has worshipped idols. Thus to falsehood, idolatry, lust for money, one has no endurance and standing. That is, one has no money, which is called yikume, standing. Hence falsehood cannot stand. For idolatry, a foreign god, is neuter, and cannot give fruit, as explained clearly in the lesson. But generally speaking, those who most lustfully pursue money die in debt, leaving behind nothing. And even if they don't die in debt, the omaaiiinnn are indebted to their lusts. They lust so much for hoards of money that they run around in great toil all their days, endangering their lives in very dangerous situations, just in order to satisfy the lusts, as if they had a great debt to pay up. But actually, it is the debt of idolatry, as said above. However, they are never able to satisfy their lusts, to pay up the debt of their lust. For no one dies having satisfied half of one's lust. Hence one's money is not one's money at all, for one has no pleasure from one's money, since a foreign god is neutered, and gives no fruit. Thus it is impossible to draw benefication and sustenance and earn money, that is holy money, and to be satisfied with one's lot, which is the essence of wealth. As our sages said, who is wealthy? One who is satisfied with one's lot, other than by way of breaking the lust for money, which is an aspect of truth, and the main source of benefication. For this reason, earning a livelihood is twice as difficult as giving birth, for one must pass through and break the 140 streams of the lust for money, which is the only way to earn money. This is because benefication is drawn mainly with truth, represented by the breaking of the lust for money. With this, the lesson is all connected. Understand this very well. For the rebbe's nanach, nachman, meuman own words are extremely deep and very profound, related to section number 1. Money corresponds to the countenance. This is why our sages said, the wealthy are the face of the earth. As Rashi comments on the verse, the famine was on the face of the entire earth. Who are the face of the earth? The wealthy, for money and wealth represent the face, countenance. Also there, the lust for money corresponds to darkness. This is alluded to in the bezH. He sets an end to darkness. This is the filth of gold, related to section number 3. He banished the enemy before you and said Hashmed. This is also because all of Israel are considered tzaddikim on account of the covenants. Therefore, anyone who guards the covenants more than another is able to cast him down, for he is an aspect of a tzaddik, the holy countenance, compared to the other, regarding whom the verse says, he banished the enemy before him. For this reason, one must be careful not to fall into the lust for money whenever one is enduring descent, for perhaps the other person has a holy countenance compared to him, and thus none of us possesses the power to cast him down. And this casting down means being cast into lust for money. This casting down means being cast into lust for money, and this is why one must be careful concerning this. Also there, all of Israel are considered tzaddikim on account of the covenant. At the time I heard explicitly from the rebbe, nach, holy mouth, that this means that simply by virtue of being circumcised, they are also considered tzaddikim, related to section number 4. This corresponds to the mezuzah. Shakai will be your treasure house. Shakai represents the covenant. The name of Shakai represents the concept of who told his world, die enough. This alludes to being satisfied with one's lot, and saying that what one has is enough, and not lusting any more. This is a form of breaking the lust for money, which one attains by guarding the covenant. Also related to section 4, the lust for money is negated by fulfilling the commandment of mezuzah, which is why the commandment of affixing a mezuzah parallels the commandment of not coveting. Come and see now God's wonders in what is stated in Yerushalmi Peah. A governor sent a precious stone to Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yehuda sent him back a mezuzah. It seems very strange. Why Rebbe Yehuda sent him specifically a mezuzah rather than any other sacred object? But the idea is well understood according to the concept that the Rebbe nanach, nachman, meuman revealed in this lesson. It is specifically the mezuzah that negates the lust for money, which is why he sent him specifically a mezuzah. This governor sent him a precious stone that is worth in money, for it was worth a lot of money, and he considered it the most important thing. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda sent him in return a mezuzah. For the mezuzah negates the lust for money. When salt sarya spoils, this refers to one who fell into the stench of the lust for money. For this reason, the word sarya was used to denote spoilage, for this word is used regarding idolatry, as in saru, they veered quickly. This is because one who is sunken in money worships idols, which is why images of their idols are imprinted on all their coins. With these ideas, the insightful person will be able to explain the entire Talmudic section of gold acquires silver, but silver cannot acquire gold. Copper acquires in some. Whichever is considered greater, legal tender is considered cash in relationship to the other. See the entire section there, and see the section regarding if money can be acquired by way of barter. And the section regarding something that is treated as money. And the section regarding something that is treated as money in relation to something else. this will all become. And the section regarding something that is treated as money in relation to something else. This will all become clear to the insightful person. This will all become, and the section regarding something that is treated as money in relation to something else. This will all become clear to the insightful person according to this lesson and a few other concepts. That's number 20 for the rebbe's own words. Nanach, nachman, nachman, meuman. The sages of Athens asked him, where is the middle of the world? Lifting his finger and pointing, he said, here. Miyemar, who says? They retorted, bring a rope and measure. He said, holiest, 8 now. Number 1, no, there is a light that is beyond our nefesh, light soul, our ruach spirits, and our neshama, higher soul. This is the light of the infinite. The intellect may be unable to perceive it, but the mind nevertheless persistently pursues it. By pursuing it, the intellect is able to grasp it. The intellect is able to grasp it in a perceiving yet not perceiving way, for indeed it is impossible to grasp it, for it is beyond the nefesh, ruach, neshama. But no, it is impossible to grasp it, even in a perceiving yet not perceiving way, other than by way of performing commandments with joy. Nachman, meuman.